So Henrik and Ballanstone from the Way of the Brave, thank you very much for joining us. Congratulations.
Hey.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
It's pretty much always the same question, and the reason I do so like the generic question is always sort of starts to get to the nub of it, which is why you decided to make it, how did it come about?
Well, I mean, I think this is a very relevant film because we're living in a time where we're at a junction for the future where we're going to go, and I think it's very important that we start looking back where we came from, because if we don't have any roots, then we can easily be manipulated. So I was looking into the Hopi Prophecy, that when the earth is ravaged, people of all colors and creeds will come together.
So you already had this. I mean, there was no sort of defining moment. You've always been interested in this. Is that right?
Yeah, actually, Native Americans since I was a kid. But then I was with Occupy LA back in 2011, and
really?
I heard, yeah, and
that
I heard,
far back?
Yeah, that's when I first heard of the rainbow people, and I was like, wow, I have to check it out one of these days. And then I was out in LA, and someone told me, yeah, a rainbow gathering is coming up. So I was like, okay, I gotta go, and got my cell phone and just headed out. There was no other time to prepare.
So you'd always envisaged shooting this on a. I mean, there was, or were you going there initially just to find out what it was about? But then you had the phone and started knowing to do this. So was there a grand plan to actually shoot this even before you got there?
I mean, I didn't have that much choice, to be honest, but I think it worked really well, actually, with the message that it's very grassroots, and so it brought out, with the message that they're delivering, it's very complimentary, I think. Yeah.
And how long were you there for? And how welcoming were they? I imagine they were very friendly, because meeting you're very,
right.
You're a very welcoming person. I can tell you. You're just by your very nature the kind of person. I hope I can tell you. You seem, very, a genuinely spiritual, nice person. I'm sorry, I'm sort of waffling on a bit, but is that kind of the what you experienced when you were there?
Yeah, I mean, it is absolutely beautiful when you come there, because it is like a family. Everybody's welcoming, and you can sit down with pretty much any camp. There are several different camps. So, but you're welcome in any one of them, and you get a lot of hugs.
So when you're there, Henry, and you're like, look, I really want to tell this story. I'm going to film this on my phone. I may be making a documentary. What kind of reactions did you get?
Some people didn't want to be on camera, which is understandable. But I think a lot of people, it was a very open atmosphere, I would say, because it is an important message that I think a lot of people want to bring out to the world, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of times when you look at society as a whole, and you take a real stance on what happened in North America to begin with the American Indians, and you take another stance in where we are today within governmental procedures, it's really just transpired into a point where you really don't have the liberties, you don't have the ability to be free. My grandfather always used to say, a lot of times people support the area of freedom, but if he wrote it, and he wrote it on the ground, and he spelled F-R-E-E, and then he ran a line through it, and he put D-U-M-B. He says most people are too dumb to know what free is, because they allow other people to go ahead and dictate them instead of understanding within their heart that we're a true spiritual being here on this planet. And so when you look at the transformation of society, what happened to the American Indians is now happening to everyone, not just in the United States, but around the world. And so you take a real hard stance with what he's done, bringing this energy in to go ahead and translate it. Because a lot of times people have preconceptions. And so, when he came down and did that, and I should say up, because there's about 9,000 elevation over there where we're at in the Uintas. And it's a very secretive area. The rainbow people within this association organization, they gather yearly, and not just in the United States, but around the world. And they're a very loving, kind, respected individual on an individual basis. They love you for who you are. They're not asking you to change. They're just accepting. And when you look at the acceptance overall, we have to be able to, again, look at where the government is in the United States. And where we're getting really pushed and torn is with not just the laws that are color of law, but through Agenda 21, the UN policies, things of this nature. And it's really devastating America.
So what's your biggest fear? If I said to you, if you can name one thing you're really afraid of? And I know all these, you've highlighted a few things here, but what is there anything that stands head and shoulders above the others?
Well, I really don't have fear, first of all, because if you live in fear, you maintain that energy and it will surround you. And so fear has never been an issue within my energy.
Okay.
But my biggest concern, is the ability to be able to practice your belief, your spiritual belief. And currently right now in the United States, you don't have that ability. I mean, most of the churches are what is referred to as a 501c3, other nonprofits, which the government actually doesn't even allow the churches to talk about government. They don't allow them to do any of this, and if they do, they can lose their charter, so to speak.
Oh, really? So they can't be seen to be right or left wing leaning, as an example? Or pro-Republican or pro-Democrat or whatever?
No, they can actually lose that nonprofit status.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and so when you look at the freedom of religion, okay, that's the biggest concern, I think, because in our tradition, we believe everybody's been every ethnicity at some time through a reincarnated stage. And being reincarnated, I very likely could have been the same person who helped devastate our own people. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And by knowing that's where the fear doesn't exist, is because we're all one form of energy. You've been here so many times. Henry's been here so many times. All of us have been here in our belief. And by understanding what's transpiring around the world, and then look at it just in the North American continent itself, I mean, we're in a big heap of trouble right now.
Yeah. So in your opinion, has it got better or worse in the last 20 years?
Well, I started doing the spiritual walk since I was 5 years old. I'm 53 now. Been doing it full time since 1987. And so when I look at it in the last 20 years, the awakening process has slowly been moving forward. In other words, people are understanding the diversity of lies that the government has been portraying upon the American people, as well around the world.
Regardless of their political bent, are you saying in your opinion, it doesn't matter if they're Republicans, Democrats, whoever, they're all corrupt? They're all corrupt.
They're all corrupt. The biggest corruption, though, that we have isn't in the political parties. The biggest corruption we have in the United States deals with the court systems. And that's the biggest corruption, because through the interpretive ruling, a judge doesn't have to follow the law. He makes up his own law within the court system. Yes, there's certain laws that are specific, but that judge will take that law and he can change it.
He can adapt it, yeah?
He can adapt it to make you guilty, basically. And if you have evidence that supports your innocence, they don't allow that into the court system. So it's totally corrupt. The court registry investment system is also tied into like the UN and different things of this nature, where the judges get kickbacks actually down the road in their retirement bases. And so it's a real devastation to the ability to be free, because you have no redress anymore. I mean, everybody is on the take. I personally have gone through that system. My father was the very first American Indian elected sheriff in the state of New Mexico back in the 50s. My mother helped establish the civil rights commissions throughout the United States. My uncle was a justice of the peace, a roaming judge, but a common law judge.
Yeah.
And so when I was raised, when I got in trouble, I was given a law book. And so when we look at everything from the early time, we had segregation in our schools till 77, and so, people think, the United States is a,
the land of the free.
Yeah, land of the free, but it's not. It really isn't. And it doesn't matter if you're American Indian, Irish, Chinese, it doesn't matter. You're not free.
But you can see a new system being implemented secretly, globalism, that is...
So how did you two, I know you've gone there, but how did you two actually hook up?
Well, I was out there roaming the meadows and stuff, and then I saw these teepees up on a hill, and I was like, okay, I'll go up there. And then I spoke with some people and said, well, you need to talk to Balance Toe, and and then we did the interview.
Yeah. Did you have any idea how it would end up, or I'm assuming, actually that's a bit patronising, I was going to say, I assume you had an idea, but maybe you didn't, I don't know. But the point I'm trying to get to is, did it end up being what you wanted it to be, or did the whole project end up being more positive than you hoped it would be?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. And I had a vague idea, but I also wanted to let the material speak for itself. I didn't want to force a vision onto it before I knew what I had.
Sorry, I interrupted asking you about how you met, and I'll ask you another question. Sorry.
No, it's fine.
Yeah, simply it was I was sitting in the teepee and just kind of doing my meditation and prayer for that morning, and he showed up and he asked me, "Hey, would you mind doing an interview?" And I basically said, shoot away, whatever you want to ask, feel free to ask. I have nothing to hide.
Yeah.
And our tradition, we're Pueblo Indians, south of Taos, and through our tradition, what happened is the European and the Spaniards, when they came in, they actually changed our name because our name was such an important energy. And so my family actually left the reservation later on because we couldn't practice our spirituality. And so when we look at it from the standpoint, my great 7 generations up, her name was Ascension Pondo, and she's the one who took the medicine from our tribe. We were the only lineage in the tribe that held the medicine, and she walked away from them. And so we have a lot of animosity within our own tribe because our family left, but we had to preserve what we knew. And so by the ability of having the interview and our continuation within our friendship, that we've built over this, last couple of years since it started, because it actually was shot in 2014.
Yeah.
And
oh, really? So it's a couple years old already,
yeah.
And so by maintaining that, we can really honestly make a positive influence here down the road, because it not only sheds light on the Rainbow Gathering itself, because it's such a diversity of people. We have people from all walks of life, all economic status, everything of that nature that attend this. And a lot of times people, when they see the movement of the awakening or the understanding that the government isn't, a true government anymore, it's a corporation status since 1871 in the United States. We look at the municipalities. Every municipality in all 3,192 counties in the United States are all working under what they call corporate capacity. They're not a municipal anymore. And so they actually run and govern all under administrative and admiral law. And so it's a messed up system, because again, you don't have the ability to be, able to redress an issue if there's a wrong.
Yeah. What do you think it would take to fix it? I know you could probably talk about hours about this, but in your opinion, what would it take?
Mindset.
Well, the mindset. Most people are never involved in any kind of movement unless they're personally affected. First of all, we have to get out of that mindset. If it doesn't affect,
like the civil rights movement,
yes,
as an example. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And when you look at it from a standpoint of the court systems, the two most powerful people in every county is the sheriff and the clerk of the court. And when you look at that, the clerk of the court actually has the ability to tell the judges, I'm not going to run this commercial admiralty court system anymore and return back to common law. But they just don't have the strength within themselves. They lack the backbone. And a lot of times they even lack the knowledge because they've been propagandized through time, through education, through the municipalities. And in Idaho, and I say we, the citizens of Idaho, actually changed over 3,000 laws in that state. And I mean, I was, pretty much, had a crosshair upon my head, so to speak, by the government. And I've talked to the FBI, I've talked to everybody within this realm of this new awakening process, because it's a spiritual war we're at. Yeah. I mean, each and every one of us are spiritual beings in our tradition. And so when you look at it from the standpoint of what you've done, it has transpired in a manner that is really going to change society. Right at this moment, as this film gets out there, it'll give the people the foundation to start and to recognize what Agenda 21 has done, the White House Rural Council, how everything is tied into one fog or one veil to disallow the individual to really know the truth.
I mean, what happened to the Native Americans is the plan for all of us now in this.
Has it affected you making this? Has it changed how you feel about things?
Yeah, absolutely it has. And I think, we have to really reevaluate a lot of things. And for me, getting to know you and just getting into understanding that mindset, the native mindset, so to speak, I'm looking back at my own heritage, Asa, tro, and
because you could easily go back in 2 years and have a re-look at this,
Yeah.
or 5 years, and see if things have changed, or if there's a sequel. I don't mean that, but there's a new part of the story, because things change all the time, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I guess, is that something that you've thought about?
Yeah, I mean, gradually you start thinking and it grows on you and stuff like that. And yeah, but it's a growing process.
Yeah.
It's a learning process where things evolve. But definitely in the better direction, I would say that.
When you look at what I've seen just in my lifetime, okay, I can still remember signs in the windows where it said no blacks, no Indians, no Mexicans. I can still remember where in the school system that the minority people or the people who were on lower economic status were always placed in the back of the school in the room itself, and everybody else was moved forward. And so you look at the education system, you look at what's changed within that area just since the 70s, since our family had initiated the first federal investigation in the state of Idaho dealing with busing. And you look at all those things that have transpired. The biggest problem dealing with transparency is political correctness.
Yeah.
Because political correctness has taken the individual who is truly has his own way of thinking or her own way of thinking and put it underground, where now you don't know who is discriminatory against you. Because again, it's due to the political correctness, where before at least you had an idea.
Because you're always thinking in the back of our minds, am I saying the right thing?
Yeah, that's a definite threat.
And that is
we got to get past political correctness.
I mean, in the UK, personal experience, I mean, I'm of an age, unfortunately, I can remember the 70s very well. And where I used to be I'm quite left-leaning, I've become so disenfranchised with politics, I really couldn't care less anymore. Yeah. And that's a terrible state to be in, because where I was truly interested in it, in the last 15 years, honestly, they all just look like the same. They could all be the same colour.
Because they've all been bought
in terms of political colour,
Yeah, there's no difference
There's
anymore.
no difference. They're all that's not quite true, but it almost is. I mean, Jeremy Corbyn, who's just come into Labour, is quite unusual. But generally speaking, I couldn't care less. And I should. And I did. But not anymore.
But I guess the political system
It's the will. It's the will that's been driven out of me by the lack of will politicians from the country.
Babylon, right?
Definitely Babylon.
Yeah.
And when you look at it from the standpoint of the generations that are coming up, okay, because there's you got your different X generations, all these different types of generations, and the hardest part in society today in America, under my belief, is the youth of today in their 20s, because they have very little action. They have this entitlement base in our tradition.
Absolutely, yes. So I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, because again, when you look at the entitlement, that's all ego based, and when you look at the action, that's all spiritual based. Because again, we as people, on a spiritual level, have to create our own destiny within our own path. And if we just sit around expecting everybody to feed us, clothe us, give us our car, give us our education, we have no reason to move forward, because we're just accepting.
Well, the goal
we'll lose the gratitude part of it too, with the entitlement.
And I'm guilty of that, because everything you say is absolutely right. I'm looking at my children, or 15, 25 years, and they're all, sadly, a lot of this is to do with, and there's me, we've all got smartphones, I know, the internet, and it's changed things, but not all for good, because it has made this generation of millennials lazier, less goal-driven, and there's, I know the genie's out of the bottle now, but it's moved the goalposts in such a radical way that, although there's some brilliant things about it, and in fact, you've alluded to it, you shot it on your phone, it's fantastic, but in the great scheme of things, I do worry about where we're heading.
But I think that's why it's so important with the rainbow gathering to actually get out in nature,
because it's
reconnect.
A real physical, active thing, as it is,
Yeah, when you look at what's transpiring around the world, and then you look at individual countries, okay, we're all of a certain tribe. Like it or not, you can deny it if you like to, that's okay, but we're all from a certain tribe.
Yeah.
To have a cultural foundation to recognize who you are is so important. We as American Indians have to be not only an example, but we also have to overcome, like within our tribe, the women really were the strong people within our tribe. You look at other tribes, they use a lot of the male energy within that tribe itself. The importance part of that is when you look at what's transpiring overall, we have to be able to forgive. And it has to come from our heart. We can't have animosity towards the Europeans anymore. The American Indian must, not have to, but must, share that sacred knowledge since the beginning of time within each of their tribes, with the general population. But right now, currently, there's so many tribes that are so upset at the European, the white man, blah, 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 it goes on and on. That's not being an example. That's not showing forgiveness. That's not living in love. That's being, false within your walk.
Yeah, there's also the aspect of cultural Marxism that it's feeding this anger to keep us fighting with each other. I mean, that's a definite aspect that we got to acknowledge too.
When you look at the government and you look at what's transpiring, the government feeds that energy. It is no different than 9/11. The United States government did that. I mean, I believe that. There's no way.
Well, because of the machinations that occurred from policy,
correct,
over a number of years.
Yes, and so when you see what's transpiring within all these red flags, so to speak, this falsehood that's happening, so they can take the guns away from the citizens, so they can do all this stuff. All it is a big diversion, no different than sports. I played basketball in high school and all this other stuff, and I enjoyed it. However, when you look at the professionalism in sports today, all it is a distraction. And it allows people to go into another area so they don't have to really look at themselves or look at what's happening around them. Yeah. And it's kind of a sad situation when you look at it from that standpoint and you open that veil, because most of us are unwilling to even look at ourselves. Yeah. How many times have you looked in the mirror and just looked at yourself and said, you know what, I love me. I don't have to change. I could be overweight, I could be thin, I could be, red hair, black hair, I could be bald, it don't matter. I love me. We don't teach that. Instead, we teach judgment. We teach discrimination on a basis that most people don't even have an understanding, because it's so infiltrated within every part of society now.
Yeah. And I think that, capitalism, I could talk about this for hours, but there's a lot to answer on it, and not in a good way. Because I think a lot of this is driven by the me generation, the have and have-nots. Yeah. And it's the same in the UK. I can see a massive sea change, north-south divide. The top 1% of the UK control 90% of the
Babylon.
Economy. Yeah, and it is. And I'm in a fortunate position. I'm relatively speaking, whatever that is, I don't have to worry too much about a certain living standard. Not that I'm necessarily driven by that, but I'm quite fortunate. But I see a lot of poverty. Yeah. I've seen it myself, and it's a concern, a massive concern. Yeah. Housing, lack of education, health. Lack of work, lack of jobs, it's endless. So we're not immune from it.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And a big fear for us is what's going to happen to the European Union in a month. Are we going to stay part of this bloc? There's lots of things going on in the background.
Yeah. Hopefully you'll leave.
Hopefully we'll stay.
Because you think so?
I hope to stay. I'm not a fan of isolationism, and you said something which is true, that we're part of a great tribe. Frankly, at the end of the day, we're human beings, and I think. For me, if we pull out, it's my personal opinion. Yeah. I don't want to be a little Englander. I've got no problem being a European. International citizen. We're all part of the same thing. And I think, in times of trouble, we need to stick together. Yeah. So we want to be at the table. Yeah. And if we're not at the table, where does it leave us?
The problem is with centralization, that it's so much easier to control a lot of people. And if the top gets hijacked, so to speak, then it can so much easier destroy everything. So I think it's also going back to decentralization and the individuality. And
but the flip side of that is, if you have effectively what we're talking about here is federalism, and you have that, of course, with a collective, but there's no reason. Look, we haven't lost our culture. We haven't lost talking about how we've got history that goes back a couple of thousand years. We've got we live in an amazing country. It's incredible history. We haven't lost that becoming part of the European Union. Yeah. But you think these countries, if we leave, do you think they're going to say, yeah, great, you've left us, and you want to trade deal with us? Forget it. It's not going to happen. You know, there's people that put their head in the sand. They will do everything they can to make life difficult for us.
And that's true.
And
that's a problem.
It is going to be a problem.
That people can't leave, by their own will, that they'll be punished and stuff.
And I don't care if France is 25 miles away. I love it. I love coming here. It's no issue. Mm-hmm. And I think, let's all shake hands and be friends and be grown up about this. We don't need to cause problems. And I think by pulling away, if it happens, I think that will create more of a problem, personally. Mm-hmm. And like I say, it gets back to what you were saying earlier. Mm-hmm.
Well, when you look at coming together as a collective source of energy, all of us, no matter what vibrational frequencies we speak out, our actions create, food that we take in, music that we hear. They're all a vibrational frequency that's either going to be a beneficial or a negative aspect. But we also have to take into consideration wherever there is light, there is also shadow.
Of course.
Yeah.
And so at that same moment of time, through that consideration, when you look at the countries overall, there's nothing wrong with an individual country taking care of themselves. There's nothing wrong with an individual country saying, please, to another country, will you come help us? Okay? But when you have, like the United States, with military bases everywhere and things of this nature, that's almost, ridiculous to a point where it's almost like a dictatorship.
Well, look, the fiscal cliff you're at now, is it 19, 20 trillion? Trillion?
Yeah.
I mean, you can never pay that off.
No.
Yeah.
No.
And it's fake money anyway.
Yeah, it's fake money.
Yeah.
I mean,
exactly.
It's like, and where does that go? Who do we own? The banks?
Well, our
It's
our debt mountain in the UK is worse than Greece's.
Yeah.
And obviously everyone knows what's happened with Greece. So they're about to default. It's going to happen sooner or later. The difference with us is we've got long-term debt. But even so, put it into perspective. You still owe a shitload of, I'm talking about us, and it's crazy. It's crazy. It's got to come to an end.
Yeah.
And it has to, because you look at what your debt, you look at the United States, the individuals in the United States each holds the most amount of debt compared to anybody else on on the planet. When you look at it from a standpoint of debt, it all boils down to, and this is something that most people are unaware of. In the United States, what transpired through time was simply, back in the early 1900s, they wanted to go ahead and tax women for having children. It was called a maternity tax. Well, that didn't fly because women were just starting to come and being able to, look at voting.
Yeah.
And so the women were like, boy, that ain't happening.
Yeah.
And so what they decided to do is they went ahead and they made the national vital statistics. And so in the United States, you have two actual birth certificates. You have a birth certificate with your name in all caps, and you have a birth certificate with your name in upper and lower case. Some people think, well, what's the difference? Well, when you look at the Administrative Procedure Act of every state, which has governed that state, because it's a corporation, it simply says that all letters of the English alphabet only include uppercase letters. There's no distinction between typeface or font that will be recognized when your name is in all capitals. So that means you're a corporation in the United States.
Right.
And so you can actually go to your place of birth, ask for your birth certificate, and they'll always give you the uppercase birth certificate because they want you to remain in that corporation status. If you specifically ask for your original, then they'll give that to you too. But very few people do because it costs more money.
And I don't suppose many people think about it either.
Yeah.
And so everything, like myself in the United States, I don't have a driver's license. I don't register my automobiles. I have insurance on them. And I drive all over.
You don't even have license
No,
plates.
I don't have license plates on my car or anything. I carry my title. I do everything under common law. I've been pulled over. Matter of fact, when I was down in California here about a month ago, I was pulled over down in that area. And the police officer, after we went through all this time, they ended up with 3 policemen, each one with a supervisor above. And they came back and they said, you know what, we just got educated. Thank you, please go on your way. And so there are a few states. Idaho has an area there where there's actually 2 stretches of law. They have law that's commercial and law that's private for the individual citizen. And then you look at the state of Wyoming, which is a really great state. That's my birth state. And they actually have it in their motor vehicle law that says if you're a private individual, in other words, somebody with proper standing on constitutional basis, or a nonprofit school, then you're exempt from all the motor vehicle laws.
So I didn't know. I didn't even know.
Yeah, and most people don't know this. And when I ran across it, I was really surprised, but I was like, yeah, that's my home state.
So you don't actually even need a driving license?
No, you don't. See, and when you look at it from the standpoint of the registration of a motor vehicle in the United States, most of the money comes back into Canada. And because it's a corporation that has went ahead and took that percentage. It's no different than our parking meters in a lot of the big cities. They're not owned by the municipality because the municipality got into some sort of financial problem. And so what they did is they sold those parking meters to a corporation for X amount of dollars so they could fill that void in their problem of finance because they weren't running the business right. You see what I'm saying? Kind of like a bailout. And now these people who own the meters are charging phenomenal rates, $25, $30 just to park.
Yeah.
You know, and it's all about the money. It's not about the ability to be free. It's not about all the effort that he's put forth within this movie, The Way of the Brave. It's a true prophecy that is actually true. You know, because there's a lot of prophecies that people look at and they're like, well, you know, I'm not really sure. I'm not seeing any signs. But the Hopi Prophecy is right on. Our family is the Rainbow Clan within the Puyallup tribe. We are the true Rainbow people, in my belief, of that Hopi Prophecy. And so by us bringing forth that energy and showing and leading and being a part of, not being a person who is in control of everything, but being able to, you know, delegate, be able to share those responsibilities. Because there's more responsibility in being free than being non-free.
You know, I've gone completely off piece because I really want to talk to you, but this has been so fascinating.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Guys, I'm going to have to call it an interview.
Thank you.
Thank you so much too.
Fantastic.
Appreciate it.
Honestly, lovely to talk to the pair of you.
Thank you.
All right.
Absolute
Cool.
privilege.